Hi, I'm Mitch Gallagher. Welcome to Sweetwater's Guitars and Gear. This time out, a special guest is joining us, Matt Heafy from Trivium.
Thanks for
coming in, man.
Thanks for having me, man.
Appreciate you being here. Playing a gig here in town, and you're on an extended tour out and about across the country and the world, I assume.
Oh, yeah.
So you're covering lots of territory.
Yeah, just finished UK, Europe, Australia, South Africa, had 2 weeks home, 8-week North American tour, 4 weeks home, 4-week European tour, 3 days home. Sorry, did I say 3 weeks home? Yeah, so 3 days home, 3 days home, and then another North American tour.
Crazy.
I'm kind of losing track of time. Yeah.
I'd be exhausted.
It's not too bad.
Not too bad?
Not too bad.
But you're getting to play all over the place.
Oh, yeah.
And lots of fans and
Yep.
things going on. Very cool, very cool. Well, thanks for taking the time to stop by here. We appreciate it.
It's an amazing facility. I had no idea this is what goes behind.
It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I always knew you guys were the biggest of the gear companies online, but I had no idea you guys had a gym and like a diner and all this mini city stuff going on.
Yeah, it's kind of set up where you can come in and do your job and not have to worry about too much else and go home.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And, a lot of stuff taken care of.
It's an amazing place. If I wasn't doing what I did, I could imagine working somewhere like this.
Well, that's cool.
Where I had it all self-sustained, yeah.
Take that as a major compliment.
Oh,
So
yeah.
thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah. So you actually started very young.
Yep.
You joined the band when, 12,
I was
13?
12 years old, yep.
Wow, that's just crazy.
It was my first band, first job. I was actually the second guitar player of the band. They'd never even rehearsed with the first guitar player. So they lost him. I joined 2 weeks after the band started, and then I was just the lead guitar player for 2 months, and then I became the singer.
Okay, and you've been the frontman ever since. You write most of the music?
Yep,
as well?
It's the 3 guitar players that write all the music. I write 100% of the lyrics and the vocals.
Okay.
Music, it's kind of split between the 3 of us nowadays.
Now you're credited as the rhythm guitarist, on as well as lead. But
yeah.
But are you doing all the rhythms on the
All
recordings?
the records, yes, I do all the rhythms. I do my leads, Corey does his leads and his melodies. Live, we obviously do both 50-50.
Sure,
But yes,
right.
on the records, I find that it just sounds tighter to have one specific guitar player play all the rhythms. And I think if people are looking at their other favorite bands for metal specifically, they find it's the same case.
Right. So it's just easier to lock with yourself.
It really is,
when you're
yeah.
doing that stuff. And then when you do all that, you guys do the intricate harmony leads and melodies and things that are running through stuff. Does one player do those, or do you do those as separate players?
It depends. If it's someone that wrote that part, like it's a melody that's written on top of music that already exists, it'll either be myself or Corey. Like in the song, A Gunshot to the Head of Trepidation, there's that long dual solo section. The first half was written by Corey, and the second half was written by me. So he does the melody and the harmony in the first half, I do the melody and the harmony in the second half. And live, I play all the melodies, he plays all the harmonies for both.
Okay. And again, that just lets you get it tighter, easier to be in tune, and all those kind of things
Exactly.
that you have to do to have those really tight harmonies that you guys do so well.
And he programmed an Eventide simulator on his Kemper, so live he can harmonize himself for things that I'm not harmonizing him.
Got it. Now, the latest album, Vengeance Falls, David Draiman produced from Disturbed. And you've talked a lot about working with him, and one of the things that I thought was interesting was that you didn't do like all the drums, all the bass, you did kind of chunks. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that affected the production process?
Yeah, it was amazing. When David first explained to us the way he wanted to do our record, it blew our minds. Then we're like, why don't we do every single record like this? Why doesn't everyone do every record like this? Because for people that don't know the way the recording stuff is, it's usually, like you said, all drums. And then for metal, all drums first, then all rhythm guitars, then all bass, then all vocals kind of interspersed, trading off with solos and overdubs and stuff. And David he wanted to finish half the drums for one chunk, and then do a couple songs of rhythm guitar, a couple songs of bass guitar, and immediately get on vocals as quickly as possible. So that way, throughout the entire record, I was doing vocals instead of saving it all to the end, potentially blowing myself out like I usually do for most records. Because when you're doing 3 to 8 hours of vocals a day, 2 weeks straight, it's kind of not really realistic.
That's intense.
So it was amazing to be able to do like 2 or 3 days of vocals a week for the entire process.
Now, you've also said that working with him, you gained 4 to 6 notes on the top end of your range, which is amazing. How did that happen? Was that specific exercises?
Yeah, for some reason I thought that you were born with the range you have and that's all you have. And he said, no, it's like anything else. It's a muscle, you can train it to do other things. So with this record, there's 0 auto-tune. That's something we really fought for, and that's something David highly believes in as well, that a singer should be able to sing. So there's no auto-tune, no pitch correction, none of that. So any of those extremely high harmonies people hear, specifically on Incineration and Strife, that's all me. There's no anything, there's no guidance at all. I'd never been able to hit notes like that before.
Right.
Yeah, live I give Paulo all those harmonies, so I don't have to kill myself every night.
Yeah, right.
But live I do all the main singing and screaming. Corey does the backup screaming, Paulo does the backup singing.
Okay, so you kind of divide it up that way. You've also talked about the kind of regimen that you have on the road as far as taking care of your voice. Can you address that a little bit for us?
Yeah, nowadays it's a 4-hour food cutoff before show, and a lot of people know I'm a huge into food. I have a food blog, kichichaos.com. It's all I do. Yesterday we ate at the restaurant Publican twice in one day in Chicago, which is one of my favorite restaurants in the U.S.
Nice.
So yeah, I have to cut myself off 4 hours before a show for any kind of food, 3 hours before laying flat to go to bed, drink 1.5 gallons to 2 gallons of water a day, no caffeine, no alcohol on show days at all. If I'm to have something alcohol, it's going to be, there has to be a day off the next day, and it's like a beer tops. And then if I want coffee, it's on the day off morning, and that's it.
Right.
So it's very hard to do that. Because before I was like, all right, if I'm not having alcohol on tour, that's fine, I have caffeine. Now I can't do the caffeine thing, because it just, you end up pushing too hard on your vocal cords. For some people, I mean, some people can handle it. Paul's been drinking coffee all day, and you'll be fine tonight.
Right.
But I have to be that strict. And acid in the morning, and acid at night, and just be very strict on myself.
So a lot of that is to cut down on reflux and making sure when you lay down at night you're not getting...
I never felt it like some people get. I just get it as in, it feels like a sore throat, and I start to lose some of my vocal range. And I started realizing that it was from reflux and allergies and stuff. So.
Right. So you can't do quite the rock and roll all night party every day.
Some guys do it, and I guess some people never burn out, but it'll catch up to you eventually. And I don't want that to happen.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you got to take care of your voice.
Yes.
It's an instrument like any other that you're working with. Right. Now, let's talk a little bit about your guitar playing. You have 2 signature models from Epiphone, one of which you're holding here and one of which is on the wall behind us. Tell us how this came about.
For me, when I was 11 years old, my first real guitar, and obviously I was a very fortunate 11-year-old, my dad got me a Gibson Les Paul Custom. That was my first real guitar. I played that guitar pretty much my entire life. It's on most of our records. There was one stint for about a year or so, 1.5 years, that I wasn't playing Gibson because I just thought they wouldn't ever endorse me because I just thought they wouldn't. So when they finally did and we built the relationship, it was originally through the European leg of Gibson. It was with the German offices. And we started talking about doing a signature guitar. And the idea that I had in my head was to make a guitar that was based entirely off that original Les Paul Custom, which I figure, for me, it's the most perfect guitar that I've ever played. I wanted to be based off that, but something that could be affordable. And now it's tricky to do that because the custom is what, the list price is very intense for some people, especially if you're about to get a first guitar and if parents want to see if their kid wants to pick up guitar and they're like, I don't know if he's be serious, you don't want to really get that expensive a guitar.
Sure.
So I wanted something that could be as close as possible to playing just like that guitar while being affordable enough for whether it's your first guitar or it's your main guitar. And it has to be good enough for me to use the exact same one out of the box, out of the factory on stage. So live, it's 100%. I just use my Epiphones that are shipped from the factory, and I'm happy I do that because I remember being a kid and I'd buy my favorite guitar player's signature guitar and it'd be entirely different than the one he plays on stage.
Right.
And yeah, there are I forgot the terms for it. There's like the main model and then the import models and stuff like that. I didn't want to do that this time around, so I wanted to just have one model that's the same thing I use, the same thing the kids can get.
So when someone purchases one of these guitars, it's exactly the same guitar that you have on stage tonight, or
Yep. And
that's awesome.
These ones were just shipped from the factory, before a couple tours ago.
Right. Well, you can see the appointments from the custom. The binding is very similar to what's on a Les Paul Custom on the headstock as well.
And I think they even went for the kind of faded look, because mine is all yellowed out.
Right.
The only difference with the Les Paul Custom, because I figured it's a pretty perfect instrument, I just wanted to add the access heel. I just don't like the boxiness of the neck. It's difficult playing up there.
Right.
I mean, guys like Zach Wild have no problem doing it, but for me, I've always had a little bit, I wanted it gone. So we got rid of that. EMG 81, 85.
Okay.
We added a kill pot. Originally it was just there, and I didn't know it was there. Now I use it. So it was put there, and I use it now live just for a couple like Ace Frehley kind of cheating moves.
Right.
Instead of doing the toggle switch style.
Right.
So yeah, it's basically everything a Les Paul Custom would have except for the EMG 81, 85, the kill pot, and the access heel.
Yeah, that's really sharp with all the all black hardware and everything.
I wanted to make it as minimal as possible, as sleek as possible. Just has this. So if someone loves the guitar, doesn't love me, they can easily take that off and swap it out with something else.
Right. And no pick guard.
Yep, no pick guard. I've always preferred the look of a clean, no pick guard. This is an active tone pot, even though I never use it. I guess I could disengage it, but I do like the kill pot now.
Nice.
Yeah,
nice. Now you also have the 7-string version, which is hanging behind us here. What do you find as a songwriter and as a player you have to do to accommodate that extra low end range? Are you getting into the bass guitar range? What kind of compromises do you make there?
It's crazy what some bands are doing now. Currently, a lot of even some of our friends like in the band After the Burial, they're using 8 strings, and I think on one of the songs using a 9-string guitar. So
Right.
the 9-string is definitely cutting into bass frequency. They do it amazingly. 8-string, I think I don't know what I would do for Trivium, but 7-string just seems like it'd work. John Petrucci is the guitar player that first turned me on to 7 strings. I remember I still am, big fan of Dream Theater and started hearing that range. And when I first discovered you could drop D and then discovered 7 strings, just more things you can do, more
Right.
options to go to. And I think when a guitar player has different sonic abilities or sonic options, it makes them write differently and create differently.
Absolutely. And it's just a matter of arranging. So you're not stepping on the bass player, he's not stepping on you, making sure the lines are working together to get to accommodate that extra bottom end that comes out of that guitar. Yeah. We were talking earlier, and you mentioned that on stage, your main amp now is a Kemper. Tell us how you discovered that and how you're using it.
For a while, we were using other modeling amps, and we'd always hear them. We say like, "Oh, these are great for live. They're great for the convenience of." We do a lot of fly dates. Even on this tour, I forgot what city it was. We played one city and then had to fly out the next morning, like 5 in the morning, to go play a festival in Mesa, Arizona, and then fly straight back to the Volbeat tour. And it's very difficult when you do rental gear and when you say, "Oh, this is what I need," and they send something else out, and there's nothing you do about it day of.
Right.
So we decided to cut that factor out and started using digital model amps. And I was at Frankfurt Music Messe, and someone said, "Oh, Matt, you got to check this Kemper Profiler out." So I checked that thing out, and Paulo just happened to be with Colin Richardson in the UK mixing Vengeance Falls, and they were using a Kemper Profiler. And I was like, "Oh, you mean a Kemper Profiler into a head, into a cab with a mic?" And they're like, "No, this is just a Kemper Profiler, and that's the guitar tone on Vengeance Falls." So there's actually no cab, no mic, no head. But it is a model of a great rig. I believe it's a model of an Andy Sneap studio sound that Colin Richardson mixed into our record.
Okay.
So we use that same patch live. And it was crafted a bit. Corey had to change it a bit to tweak it for the live arena because it's so different than a studio setting. And it's awesome to be able to have that same tone everywhere. So we've got Corey, Paulo, and myself all in the Kemper Profilers. We've got US main and backup rigs and European main and backup rigs. And if we go somewhere like Australia or Asia, we'll either ship our US or European rigs or fly with those US or European rigs.
Right, right. And you always have a backup. You can just carry a thumb drive with you, and you've got your, you can find a Kemper and plug that in.
Yeah, and we do have the main and the backup Kemper for each guy, just in case.
Right, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. That's so cool.
Yeah, it's so minimal. It's so minimal. We have no cabs on stage. We have wedges on stage, but they're off. So if anyone ever watched side stage, it's not very fun because you can't hear anything.
Right, just drums, right?
Yeah, that's all you hear. Yeah, but for the kids, it's amazing because it's just, I've always felt that the least amount of stuff in between my fingers and the listener's ear, the better.
Well, speaking of your fingers, I was watching you warm up here and play a little bit earlier. You have an interesting right hand technique. You're when you play slow, you're bending from your thumb joint here, adjusting the angle of your attack, I'm assuming is what you're doing there. And when you play faster, it's coming more from your wrist.
Yeah.
How did you develop that? Was that conscious? Or?
I think it was an unconscious development. I'm really into extreme metal, things like death metal and black metal. And when I first started getting into those genres, I would pick out exercises for myself out of songs and decide that this is what I'm going to use to learn this technique. So there's a band called Trivium, a Brazilian death metal trio. They have a song called Aborticide, pretty brutal title. Yeah. And the way I really got my down picking grade is from that song. That song has both a great down picking exercise and a great tremolo picking exercise. So the down picking exercise I used from that, they tune down to B on that song, but so I would just sit there with the metronome and keep playing that riff to make sure I had the stamina up. And the next riff on that, and so you're mentioning that, yeah, the picking style, very traditional, just like this, blocking the rest of the strings. When I go to tremolo picking, it's very odd. I anchor up here on the high E. So for the next riff of the song, the tremolo picking style for the. But yeah, I anchor all around these top strings and kind of.
But the motion's actually coming partially from your elbow as well as from your wrist there when you're playing it that way.
Yeah, so each rhythm technique I think has a slightly different thing going on for picking like. I think those kinds of picking things are even slightly different than that kind of thing. Yeah. And then for leads, it gets even different. I will anchor sometimes at the top strings for some of them, and as I get further out, I'll just anchor with my wrist, like things like. Like those kinds of things.
Right.
So it shifts between me anchoring around the strings and right around the D string.
Right, right.
So yeah, it does shift quite a bit.
And you're shifting your joint here, and it looks like you're almost coming more straight on to the, or edge on to the string when you're picking that way.
Interesting.
Is that,
Yeah.
yeah, there's definitely an angle there that when you're playing the other way, it's flatter. So it's got to be changing the tone as well in the attack.
Yeah, it should be. Yeah.
As you're playing it that way.
Yeah,
So,
that's
yeah.
cool. I never really noticed how different it changes. But yeah,
I watch everything.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, because before I would try to do what other guitar players did, like anchor exactly where they anchor, and I figured the best way to do anything, whether from picking gear, picking guitars, picking a style of music, is to just do what feels comfortable to you, to not do what someone else does.
Right.
And that's the same thing, like I said, with gear. Even though this is the ideal guitar for me, it may not be the ideal guitar for everyone, but they should at least give everything a try and figure out what works.
Absolutely, right. Yeah, you have to find your sound and the playability that you want. Now, the neck shape you have in this is fairly flat on the back, and you're anchoring your thumb pretty much in the middle, almost like a classical player would, and coming very 90 degrees on with your fingers. Again, that's something you developed because it was comfortable for you, or were you looking at the way you could play more cleanly that way, or where did that come from?
Anytime I thought of doing it the way someone else did it, I think I'd messed myself up. And so since I don't even really think about what's happening, I think that's the best way to do it. Whatever happens naturally, where there isn't any torsion on a wrist or torsion on a finger.
Right.
I think that's the way to do it, to let it develop itself naturally. Yeah, so it'll shift at times, like when I'm doing things like... Yeah, the thumb keeps changing shape. Yeah, the thumb will move around all different places. Yeah, shifts around quite a bit.
When you're doing lines, I think it's pretty much anchored behind, from what I was watching anyway, the stuff that you were playing here. I was also noticing it looks like you tend to favor three fingers on a string licks. And is that to achieve the alternate picking, or is it to get a smoother flow across the fretboard, or how did you develop that?
I think with the distances, it's always been the most realistic, because if you're doing 4 finger per string down here, it's going to inevitably be probably chromatic. And so, yeah, I've always just been a fan of 3. So when I first learned how to play sextuplets, it would always be 6/6, But when I was able to take a couple lessons from John Petrucci, he showed me a different way of... We're making it more like in terms of 6, so 3 and 3 is the 6, versus just stagnating here. Where this sounds a little more interesting, so I've been shifting to that.
Right. It changes a little bit the way you accent the notes, too, as you move across those strings with a 3.
Instead of yeah.
Right, right. So it gives it a different vibe, different feel to it. What other things did you pick up from John?
I really wanted to pick his brain on how he warms up nowadays, because for me, ever since I was 16 and gotten into the Rock Discipline VHS, I had used those exercises for every single show we've ever done. Those things. And the thing he does nowadays, I don't want to give away too many of his secrets, it was basically, I'll do a hybrid version of what he was doing, 1 finger per string, and then 2 fingers per string, then 3 fingers per string, 4 fingers per string. The idea like... But every single pattern possible. Do those, and then 3 fingers. And then 4. That kind of stuff.
Right.
So that's what I use for every show now.
So you're getting a combination of both all the different finger combinations for independence and articulation with this hand, but you're also getting all those changing combinations on your right hand as well. Sometimes you're doing 1 note per string, 2 notes per string, which changes the way you're alternating. But you're a pretty strict alternating picking guy, it looks like.
Yeah, I don't do the economy stuff. I just never learned how to do it. And legato playing is something I'd like to put more into my playing, but it just never really took shape with me.
Right, right.
Yeah.
It was interesting. I was reading an interview with you, and you mentioned the word discipline. And you've talked in the past about how metal is not a genre. It's really a lifestyle and a culture. Can you talk a little bit about that, what that means to you?
Yeah, for me, it's... I guess the best example is a festival in Germany called Wacken Open Air. It looks like Wacken, W-A-C-K-E-N. Every year it sells out before they announce the headliners. They're able to have headliners like Emperor, one of my favorite bands, a black metal band headline, a festival that 80 to 100,000 people show up to. People camp at it, people stay at it. It seems to be a safe festival where there's camaraderie and people can enjoy the same sort of thing. I feel that with mass, easily to be consumed music, things that are written by songwriters, performed by people that are just put out to instantly grab and gratify. That it's not really about creating something from the heart, creating something from the soul. And it's just about instantly making as many record sales you can, or as many single sales you can. That's not legitimate art to me. That is something, that is a profession, yeah, but it's not something worth, I don't know, something worth living and dying for, in my opinion. And whereas with metal, it's always been so much more than that. It's not just what you turn on and off, it's who you are. So a metal fan is someone that is metal through and through, someone that's in multiple things. Like I'm into everything possible, every genre, but first and foremost, I was always into metal. It brought me into this life. It showed me what I can do for a living, and it made me who I am. So that's the way I believe it is. Like in South America, when you see metal fans there versus, I don't know, a pop fan in the States, it's very different. You know, it's something that they're getting their favorite band tattooed on them. They're waiting days ahead of time for the show. Those kinds of things. I think it's those little ingredients that show the dedication to a lifestyle beyond just a state of music.
Right, right. And you've talked in the past also about the difference in your mind between manufactured music and music that's created for the sake of art, which is something you were just touching on there. Can you talk a little bit more about that? What does that really mean?
I mean, there's a lot of bands out there nowadays that, in all genres, that everything is written for them, everything is played by someone else for them. Maybe not in every single case, but there are a lot of records out there that there aren't real drummers playing the drums that people are thinking they're hearing. At least if they put it out there, hey, these are programmed, that's one thing. I don't know, it was weird for me when I first started touring and I would see a lot of my favorite bands, and I would hear something else aside from the band performing. I would hear tracks. I would see a fader with like a special cymbal on the soundboard, and when they'd crank it up, you'd hear other vocal tracks coming in. And it's cool for backing tracks, symphonics, or whatever, things that are maybe impossible to pull off. But for main things, if it's a singer that's a person saying, I am a singer, this is what I do for a living, and it's something they can't pull off, something if they can't practice what they preach live and do what they say they are for the people that are truly dedicated to them, it was always a hard thing to stomach for me as a fan to have to wake up to that. That's why for our band, we use no assistance live. There's no click tracks, there's nothing wrong with click tracks, there's nothing wrong with backing tracks, but to rely on crutches and not have to perfect your instrument. For a guitar player to not really have to worry about being a good guitar player because they have something aiding them, or because they have someone that's gonna write the riff and record the riff for them in the studio. It's not the way it should be. Bands should be able to play their own instruments and write their own music and perform their own stuff. Right,
absolutely, absolutely, that's great, that's great. So Trivium means triple intersection. And we've talked about in the past where there's three elements as far as Trivium's music goes, with metalcore, melodic death metal, and thrash that you've kind of drawn from to make up the sound of Trivium. Can you tell us a little bit about what came from each of those styles that goes into comprising the music you put out?
For us, we've always, I mean, down the line as we started looking back at the band constructively, I say we're a metal band first and foremost, and we draw from so many different things. We draw from extreme metal as well. There are ingredients of death metal in our band. There are very subtle ingredients of black metal. I'm a huge fan of classical music and world music, and I believe that people can learn something from every style of music, even if they don't like it. They can learn what not to do. So we draw from any and everything. In waves, a huge influence for me was film. I was really into directors like Lars von Trier and Christopher Nolan and Paul Thomas Anderson. Just seeing what they would create would make me want to create, make me feel inspired. I wouldn't make things like they did, but it would make me want to just make something new. So there is really there's no end to what I feel can inspire someone to want to make something. And I think people need to delve into that as much as possible.
Right, you have to be open to all the things that are out there and bring that all together. And that's how you create something original, as opposed to just emulating what someone has done in the past.
Exactly.
So, wonderful. Matt, thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure to have you here.
Likewise.
I appreciate talking with you, getting a few tips on how we can all crank our playing up, and certainly some inspiration there as well.
Thank you very much, man. Really
thanks
appreciate
so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm Mitch Gallagher. Thanks for joining me for Sweetwater's Guitars and Gear.